Welcome to the podcast. Today, my guest is Peter Murphy.
Oh,
Yes.
there's a lot of Peter Murphys. It's confusing sometimes.
Do you prefer Peter or Pete?
Well,
I only know you as Pete.
I bill myself as Peter Murphy, but everybody calls me Pete. I don't know anybody who knows me who doesn't call me Pete or Pedro or Pedo, which is scary. In America, it's scary. Or Petey. I've got
Petey.
the Veronicas call me Petey. They're the only people in the world that call me Petey.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think it's the Australian thing to just shorten it in some way. Pete.
Or extend it. Like you shorten it to Pete, then you extend it to Petey or Pedo or what, like it's a weird thing.
Compadre.
If it's short, we need to make it go long. Tomo, it can't be.
What got you into singing in the first place?
Honestly, I started out when I was 3, my sister was doing ballet and I would sit up the back of her classes and kind of half do it behind until the teacher said, you should enroll him in classes. And my mum was always like, because she wanted us to pay for them. She didn't want him to get a free class. So at 3, I started doing ballet, which was hard because I grew up in, the middle of Logan. So they didn't enjoy me being a 3-year-old ballerina. But yeah, so that's where I started. I liked what my sister was doing, but also I'd see Gene Kelly and I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to be Gene Kelly.
Yeah.
And then when I was 9, they enrolled me in they said, look, he's just so loud. And just
You're interrupting the class.
Singing around the house, that we just need to see if someone can teach him to sing a bit better, So it's not just loud. So they put me into the famed talent agency in Brisbane, and within 3 months I was doing a TV show.
Wow.
That was kind of like a Queensland terrible version of Young Talent Time.
Oh yeah.
It was called the Westfield Young Entertainers. And so literally within 3 months of me starting to sing, I was working professionally, I guess, as a singer. So and I just never stopped from there.
Did you learn a lot in those early days?
Yes, I didn't learn.
Did you actually have a singing teacher?
No. So I never really learnt to sing, as I would describe it to somebody. Learning to sing is a real skill. I was very lucky that I naturally had a certain number of things and that I was able to watch other people around me who were very good at singing and take things from them.
Yeah.
But I would always encourage people in general to get someone who knows how to sing well, to teach you how to sing, as opposed to what we did, which was learn songs and learn dances each week.
Yeah.
So we'd learn 2 songs, we learned 2 dances. So we'd have a Monday and a Wednesday rehearsal where we'd learn the songs and the dances. Then on Friday we'd go in and Friday we'd record the audio, and then Saturday we'd go in and record the video. And that was our week.
Oh, okay.
So we'd have two 2-hour rehearsals, plus a 3-hour recording session, plus a 4 or 5 hour filming session.
So you're recording the audio. So obviously, when you're recording the video, it's a miming.
We'd mime to the songs. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Which is why I'm so good at it now. I'm actually not speaking live at this moment. I'm just very good at miming.
Just AI dubbing it in.
We are brilliant.
So you've had obviously an experience of the recording process at a very early age too.
Yeah, I mean, and really, it's amazing. And the things they talk about and that you kind of hear a little bit about, and then when you go into the next step and you're not in that environment and someone else talks about it and then shows you how this happens and that sort of stuff, it really kind of gives you an in, if that makes sense.
I know that from my point of view, the recording process is such a great teacher. Like listening back to yourself sing, it's amazing how the voice in your own head actually sounds different from what you're hearing back out of a speaker.
Yes, absolutely. Maybe not so much nowadays, but certainly in the beginning, yes. Now I feel like I've done it for so many years that I know what sound I'm making. But certainly back in the day, I would think, I sound like John Farnham. And then I hear it back and go, I sound like some nasal weird guy whining about some problem. And that was like when I was a teenager, that's literally what I would do. I'd be like, man, I'm killing this. And I'd hear it and I'd go, oh, that's not that good. But it does teach you something,
It
doesn't
does,
it? It really
yeah.
does. And you go, okay, well, how do I make it sound good then?
Yeah.
As long as you take that next step, I think it's good. If you don't, you go, no. That's just, you've done it wrong. You've recorded it badly, you know. But if I go, okay, well, I'm not making the sound that I thought I was making. How do I make that sound that I want to make? You know, then that's a different sort of thing.
That's where the learning comes.
That's where you get to the next step and you start to sound like you want to sound like, or you find what you do sound like that could sound great and go a different direction, you know. So
Yeah, there's that realisation of like, I don't sound like what I thought I did, but hey, the way that I do sound is actually interesting and cool.
yeah, and I could take this direction instead of just trying to sound like something that I grew up with that I thought was
I guess
the
it's
best
that
thing
thing
ever.
of whether you're trying to emulate someone or you're trying to be yourself.
Yeah, and I think there's space for both.
Yeah.
I think you can, like, taking those things from those incredible artists is important, I think, because otherwise we don't grow. We just thought we'd all be the same level forever. But, you know, taking those things and then taking it and making it your own version of that and adding your own traits to that, I think that's what makes us all grow and makes, you know, 10 years ago, I would say that I was the only person in musical theatre who could belt a high G. And now I would say there are probably 100 guys around the world who could belt a high G.
Yeah.
Like in full voice, belt a high G, because everybody's figured it out.
There's a lot of things online now. There's the Ken Tamplin.
Absolutely.
It's like every
Wolf
second
Studios,
ad
Ken
I get
Tamplin,
on
you know, those
social
guys.
media. Yeah.
And I mean, the great thing is that they do teach very good techniques. Mm-hmm. I think it's funny, you know, learning from someone like Ken Tamplin, and where I would go into it going, yes, but I already sing better than you. You might be able to teach me some technique, but what you're singing on the line, I'm like, I watch you do this, and I watch all these neck muscles go crazy, and I go, okay, that's good. And Wolf Studios, I watch his technique. He's very good. I can't pick any faults in his.
Yeah.
There's another guy who apparently trains all of these superstars and everything. Even when he's talking, he's like this. I'm going, well, that looks very tense. And so, you know, I start to question these other people. But you know, they do teach very, very good singers how to sing very, very well. Mm-hmm. So I feel like they probably have amazing things to teach each person. You know.
Okay, so as you mentioned just previously to now, you mentioned that you do musical theatre.
Yes.
So I guess that's something we should talk about. You started out when you were young and doing a version of a Young Talent Time type TV show based here in Queensland. What were the next steps to getting into musical theatre?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think that doing those childhood things give you a lot of knowledge and a lot of skills. Apart from that, they don't lead to anything. Mm-hmm. They're training grounds to have some skills, but there's no next step. You know, you've got to then figure out what your next step's going to be. For me, I started doing cover bands. I did a band called, what was called Alphabet Jam, which is a terrible name.
I remember that band though. I remember that name. It's a
Frank Monteverdi, great agent in Brisbane, named the band Alphabet Jam because there were two cool words that people liked at the time. He went, "This is going to be a great band."
The name stands out.
And he booked us across. We had a lot of bookings, and I was with great players. You know, the guys from I can't remember what the band's called. It wasn't Savage Garden. They had a band after that they promoted, that they produced. And that band, two of the musicians were from Alphabet Jam.
Oh, okay.
Three of the musicians, I think. The two musicians and the female singer were from Alphabet Jam. And then Lee Novak, who always played bass for Savage Garden, was in Alphabet Jam.
Oh,
so these guys, like, we really started out with some great musos, and they were very edgy. Like, they were singing, they were recording, they were doing all the tracks and stuff when no one was really programming tracks.
Oh, wow.
They were doing it on drum machines and stuff like that. They were singing through guitar pickups to get like some great sounds in the background. Like these guys were really, really like quite clever musicians. You know, I was very fortunate to be in a band with them, and we'd be in Mary Street, and we'd wear like white Bonds singlets and 23 red jeans, you know, and then during the night we just drop the jeans and we'd be hanging from the rafters of Mary Street over the like dance floor, which was about a foot below the rafters because, you know, it wasn't a great club. It'd be like that. Yeah. I remember one night I was there and this girl goes, "I can see your nuts." And I went, "Great." So I got down off the thing and pulled my...
She actually meant you're just crazy?
No, she meant my nuts because we were wearing boxer shorts and And I went, okay, so I've got to rethink how we do this. So, yeah, and that was the thing, but it was a great way. Like, it was so much fun.
Yeah.
We did tours of North Queensland, did the pig pen up in...
Great old venue, the old playpen.
Yeah. Sorry, I should call it the playpen. We call it the pig pen.
Well, it's not there anymore, yeah. Well, they had and then, because for years there was the playpen in Cairns, and then they built one in Townsville.
Did they really?
Yeah.
Well, we did the one in Cairns. And can I tell you, we sat there every night. We went to the restaurant because they give you a free meal in the restaurant. And every night, at the same time of the night, when we'd go for dinner, they'd play the Sade album. And I tell you, it gave me a real appreciation of Sade. Like, some of her music is really clever because we'd be there every night listening to Diamond Life, Lover Boy. I'd be like, oh, this is really quite cool. Like, and the music in this and then like her whole album would play every single night, which was a bit annoying and yet really made you listen to
soothing.
it. After a week you're like, this sucks, and then after 2 weeks you're like, oh, I didn't hear that before.
Yeah.
So.
No, I had a residency for a while in the Court Jester Bar, which was the little offside of the playpen.
And when we did playpen, the main band would go into the Court Jester Bar and play there.
Yeah.
And then we'd watch them as well. They were brilliant. I can't remember what they're called, but they'd play a whole heap of Toto
stuff. It would either been Big Noise, or it would have been Mr. President, or...
It might have been Mr. President. It wasn't Big Noise, but it might have been Mr. President at that point.
Mr. President, which they got the nickname Mr. Resident.
I started a band with a friend of mine called Planet Funk, which we did, and then that became... I think it became Odyssey, and which is now Vegas Please. So it's still running now, but it's been through many incarnations over the years. So and that sort of stuff, and just did a lot of different things. Did some originals bands, and just kept doing all that sort of stuff. And then,
so is there any original bands that you can think that played with that had any sort of single releases, video
absolutely
clips?
Not.
No,
absolutely not. No, we wrote a lot of stuff, and it was never very good. So.
Were you writing lyrics?
I write lyrics. I write melodies.
Yeah.
So you've
had a good crack at it.
Yeah.
At the original band thing.
Yeah. I mean, I say yes, and yet I never did what someone like Casey Barnes does, which is dedicate my life to becoming an originals artist.
Yeah.
And go, I'm an originals artist. I'm going to spend my life sending things out to people all the time. I'm going to stick with it. When they say no, I'm going to go, great, how can I repackage this? What can I redo? And then send them back something else.
Yeah.
Go, hey, how about this? What was your feedback on the last thing? So I never took it seriously in that way. And I find those are the people who really succeed at being
but
originals
you've got to be
artists.
dedicated to it.
I mean, like Casey, but also lots of most people who have been successful have done exactly the same thing as Case.
Yeah.
And they've gone, I am staying at this. I'm going to hassle these people until they take me seriously. Mm-hmm. I'm going to ask them for feedback so that I can give them what they want next time. And so that when they come back to me next time, I say, but you said you wanted this. And it's hard for them to argue with that.
Yeah.
He's a great salesman, and I watch people like Casey and I go, you know what? If I'd done that, then I might be in a different position now. But I enjoy where I'm at, so I'm not like I regret it. But
no, it's one of those things, you make decisions along the way. Sometimes those decisions are based around the need to earn a living so you can pay rent and
I generally sold out for that. Yeah, I generally sold out for the
I guess
$800 a week that we got back then when you worked 5 nights a week.
Yeah, because in the initial stages of doing an original career, you're basically making no money whatsoever.
Well, I made it much worse than that, and then I went into stand-up comedy with a friend of mine, and we did stand-up comedy songs.
Oh wow!
With my best friend, and he'd play guitar, and we'd sing like dumb songs, do a few gags, go back to the songs, a few gags.
I would have loved to have seen that.
It was great. We're called Spud and Colander. Greg Sullivan, who's a fantastic Brisbane comedian, he was like, "You guys are kind of like, I describe you as gay window washers." We were like, yeah, he goes, yeah. And then you talk to the girls and I don't know what I can say on this, but anyway, this is what he'd say, and you can edit it out later. But he'd say, you talk to the girls and you're like, yeah, we're like gay window washers. We're so much fun. Yeah, we're really good. We got really great voices. And then you f*** them. And then you... And I went, that's kind of accurate. So whatever.
When you were doing that, did you... have any TV appearances or anything like that?
No, but we never pursued that sort of stuff. We started out in a theatre restaurant in Brisbane called Crazies, which is a spin-off from Drax on the Gold Coast.
Yep.
So the two families who started Drax, one went to Brisbane and one stayed down
On the coast.
south. So the grocers started Crazies in Brisbane. So we went up to Brisbane and we did it up there and we did this sort of stuff. And then we moved to the Central Coast and did it with some people up there who in Sydney and the Central Coast doing some stand up down there. And you know, we developed some stuff, but we were pretty lazy. We were enjoying life. We were young guys and just enjoying, you know, being stupid and stuff. And then we met Casey Chambers and we did a national tour with Casey as her support.
Yep.
So, which sometimes went amazingly well. Like we'd be at places and like Bathurst, we'd go and we'd do like the opening, the support for her, and they would be screaming, the roof would be shaking and stuff like that. And then we'd do places like, I remember Randwick League Club, we did, Labour Club I think it was, that we did one night with her. And I think it was so quiet that even the crickets made no noise. We could hear the air conditioning, and we'd never, like sometimes people just did not get.
So it was very hit and miss.
They were like, why are these guys here?
Do you think
They're not country music.
Do you think it was the audience that varied, or did the show? Was it the same show that you did, or was it a bit improvised?
If I was a solo comedian, I'd say it was probably me. But with two people, it's actually, you've got this great like security blanket where if one of you's down a little bit of an energy, the other one picks it up. Like,
Yep.
So I feel like we were pretty, you know, we'd always
consistent.
kind of find it because there were two of us.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'd say yes, definitely. But just sometimes they just didn't get it in that environment, like that they'd go, but this is a country music act. We came to see some country music. And sometimes they go, this is great. You know, in America, they do it a lot where they'll have a stand-up sort of opening, but not in Australia. So, you know, we were a bit hit and miss, but we had a great time. Casey's amazing. You know, we had an awesome tour with her and that sort of thing. So, and then I was doing that at the time, and I saw an audition in the paper, in the Courier Mail, the Courier Mail, for Marius in Les Mis. And so I went, oh, I'm going to go to this audition. And I went to the audition and I walked in and I sang and the guy said to me, why have we never seen you before? I said, oh, I've never auditioned for anything before. He goes, oh, all right. And he said, can you take this away and learn this song? And he gave me an orchestral score. I don't know if you've ever seen an orchestral score.
I have, yes.
Like a conductor's score.
Yeah, they're quite...
It's about this wide and it's that, and every instrument is on every page. And he goes, just learn this song. And it was In My Life, which has about 18 probably time signature changes in it. And I don't read music. And he goes, great. So we're going to run these other auditions and then come back in and sing for us. And anyway, I was the only callback in Brisbane for this audition.
Wow.
So I sat there for 4 hours and I was I called someone I knew and went, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And they just went, you'll be fine. Just do it. I went, okay, because there was no internet back then. You couldn't look up the song and listen to it.
No.
So I was right, in my life, we have burned like the music of ages, the light of the sun, and my life. You know, there's every 2 bars it changes time signature. So, and I got it probably about 80% right when I went back in, and they were significantly impressed. So we were all right. And they called me 2 days later and said, look, the person we were trying to get to sign this contract has signed the contract. So that role doesn't exist anymore. They said, but we have this role, which is swing, which means basically you just learn all of the ensemble parts and you cover everybody.
Yeah. So
Would you consider it? And I went, what's the wage? And they said, this is the wage. And I went, all right, let's do it. That's how I got into musical theatre. So, and I swung Rent.
Wow.
And then, but the producers of Les Mis put me into Rent. They were also producing that.
Wow.
And then one of the producers, the guy who was in the room that first night, was casting Fame, and he called me and said, we haven't found anyone for this role. Can you come down tomorrow and audition for this role? I did one audition. They called me the next morning and offered me that role. So, and that was my first lead role, was in Fame. And then those producers did Shout and put me in Shout. And then I did 3 different tours of Shout. And, you know, it was all connections essentially the whole way through.
But obviously you've got to have the goods as well.
Oh, it's pretty amazing. But I mean, the only real audition I did the audition for Rent. That was quite a significant audition. Even though I was in Les Mis, the producers didn't have a lot of control of that. The American creatives did. So I had to do maybe 3 auditions for that. Mm-hmm. But then apart from that, I mean, I did one audition for Fame, which was basically singing 2 songs and doing a scene, and then flew back to do Rent that night.
Wow.
And then, you know, and then they called me the next day. So, you know, the Shout, they just offered it to me. I did an audition for that was just covering David, and then taking over from David Campbell. And then the next real audition I did was for We Will Rock You, where I actually went in and did, but I only did one audition for it, which is great. And they called me the next day and said, yeah, we want you for the role.
So how was doing We Will Rock You, and how does that compare to the other theatre shows that you've done? What would you say was the most difficult role?
It's hard to pick a difficult role. It's hard to pick a favourite role. Like, it really is, because like We Will Rock You, I spent a lot of my life doing We Will Rock You. And the first tour of We Will Rock You I did was with the Australian cast in Japan. And it was the best experience of my life, except that 4 weeks in, I tore my ACL on stage. So then I had a week off. Then I came back to Australia for a week. And then I went back with a brace. And then I finished the season with a brace on underneath my jeans.
Wow.
And then I got a knee reconstruction because I literally was, on stage and went and just tore my knee apart. So, but it was great. And then they brought me on to do when they went back to Japan, they offered it to me again. And I said, thank you very much. I appreciate this, because I realized that last time I didn't kick goals as far as going off. But they were like, no, you were a great leader of the company. We loved having you as part of it. We really want you to do it, which is great and really touched me as well.
So I know that during the process of doing We Will Rock You, you got to meet Brian May and Roger.
And that was many years later.
Oh, okay.
That was actually a lot of years later.
How did that come about, and what was the circumstances surrounding that?
Do you want the long version or the short version?
Any version that you care to share.
Okay. So many years after I'd done Rent, I got a call from a man by the name of John Marr, who was the musical director of Rent. And he was then living in London, and he said, can you fly over tomorrow and do Jesus Christ Superstar as Jesus? And I went, sure. Well, I actually said, I'll get back to you. And I called him back an hour later and went, sure. And then, so I flew over and did a tour of Jesus Christ Superstar with him. And then about a year later, he calls me and goes, can you fly over to UK in 3 days and do a show called Thriller Live, which was the Michael Jackson musical? I went, sure. So I did that. I ended up doing 3 tours of Thriller Live.
What parts were you singing when you did that?
Well, it was at that stage, it now controversially was called White Rock Male. But they've got different names now, but that was the role I was doing then. So I did that for 3 seasons. And
you were singing Michael Jackson parts?
Michael Jackson songs, I wasn't as Michael Jackson.
Oh, okay.
So there was a young Michael, there was a Jackson 5 Michael.
Yep.
And then there was Billie Jean Michael.
Okay.
Apart from that, there were just people singing Michael's songs.
Right.
And I was one of those people.
Not acting as Michael personally.
I didn't have the curls and the so all the moves. But yeah, so we would do that. But anyway, I was doing the fourth tour of that, my third tour. But and I was in Glasgow, and I did the show that night. And someone had told me that they were auditioning for We Will Rock You on the West End. They didn't have a Galileo, and I'd done it in Japan twice. So I had emailed the musical director and said, hey, I know this isn't the way to do it, but I've done it here, and I don't know how else to get in touch. Could you help me out? And he wrote back and said, no worries. Here's the casting director stuff. I already told her she's expecting your call. So I called her and I talked to her, and she went, no worries, can you do this? So I finished the show in Glasgow that night. I got on a midnight train down to London, got in at 7 a.m., had a 9 a.m. audition. I walked into
How much sleep had you had?
Well, I slept a fair bit on the train, you know.
Yeah.
But, it's quite a nice place to sleep, the train, on the sleeper train. But,
the only reason I ask...
I'd say 4 hours.
The only reason I ask is for those people who are not singers, sleep is the one thing that you need that your voice can actually work properly.
And when I'm not singing, I sleep probably 3 or 4 hours a night. But when I'm doing shows, I sleep 7 or 8 hours a night. So because you need sleep. Your voice needs sleep.
Your voice, yeah.
But and I got in at 7 a.m. I had a 9 a.m. audition, and I met the woman I'd been talking to at the door, the casting director, and I said, how you doing? She goes, come on in. I walk in the room. It's the final round. They hadn't found the person for Galileo, so they'd searched all of Britain, and I walked in on the final day. And I walked in, and there was the musical director that I'd spoken to online. There was a guy playing piano, and then there was Brian May, Roger Taylor, and Ben Elton. And I went, oh. Hey guys, how are you? Good to meet you. And it was like,
Wow.
great. And,
Yeah.
and so Ben ran the whole thing. He goes, so what do you want to start with? And I went, why don't we start with, Break Free, which is the first thing you sing in the show. So I sang, I Want to Break Free. Got to the end of it. And Ben Elton stands up and he goes, oh, wow, that was very good. It's nice to finally, that's exactly how it should sound. It's nice to finally hear it. And turns to Brian May and Roger Taylor and they're like, I'm like, this seems to be going very well. And then I sang We Will Rock You, and then we did a couple of scenes, and then I sang We Are the Champions, and I left, and as I'm leaving, like I've got Brian May going, see you later, and I literally walked out of the room and immediately called my best mate and said, mate, one of two things has happened. This has either gone amazingly well, which is how it feels, or I'm that guy that they've gone, oh my God, that was so bad. And and they were humoring me the whole time because they were so, when you try to overhelp when someone's bad, I was like, it's one of those two things.
Yeah.
And luckily and then I caught a train up and did the show that night in Glasgow off Thriller Live. So, and they called me the next morning and offered me the role. I was like, thank God they called me because I was going.
You're freaking out.
Paranoid, freaking out in the head because nothing's ever gone that well before, so... And that's how I became.
Wow.
Yep. And then every anniversary of Freddie's death and Freddie's birthday, they'd come in and they would play Bohemian Rhapsody, Bo Rap with in the show. So that's how I got to sing with Brian May and Roger Taylor.
Wow. It blows me away.
I told you it's a long story.
What? So can you tell me what was it like with them performing on stage? Was Brian May using his full contingent of Vox AC30s? Was it as loud?
No, he went through the same thing, but it was probably almost as loud. And that's something you'd notice with the show too, because Brian came in very regularly.
Oh, okay.
Very, very regularly.
And he'd make sure that the guitars were nice and loud.
And for the next, as soon as he came in, he'd go, I can't do the guitars to the sound guys, and they turned up because he writes very melodically.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the most, as he says, I'm not the greatest guitarist of all time, but I said to him, but you may be the best melody writer of a guitarist in history because your melodies are what no one can get out of their heads is your melodies that the guitar plays.
Solos for the most part.
It's like, oh, everyone knows that because the melody is brilliant.
Yeah. The tonality he uses, it's like it's got a vocal quality about it as well.
Yeah, and I think he goes, well, I'm not Stevie Vai. And no, but you're not, and you're not supposed to be. You are exactly who you're supposed to be, know. But he'd come in and he couldn't quite hear the melodies and the counter melodies and stuff in some of the stereo things. So when he came in the next week, you wouldn't be able to hear the vocals on stage at all because the guitars were so loud. And then gradually, because the sound guys are worried it'll come back and he'll go, I told you to turn up and you didn't. But so they gradually turn them down, But but it was a lovely, lovely man. And I'd be after the show many times, and because I had the only dressing room on stage level. Quite a small dressing room, but right there on stage level, and I hear, excuse me, Peter. Hello, Peter. I'd be like, hi, Brian. Give me a second. I'm going to put some pants on. And I put some pants and his shirt on, and he goes, hello, I'm here this is my friend Lady such and such and Lord such and such. Is it all right if we come in and have a chat? And they just sit there, and we just talk, and he's the loveliest man I've ever met.
Wow.
I've said to people, they say, don't meet your heroes. They say, unless it's Brian May.
Yeah.
So.
Obviously, that's an amazing experience. What brought that to an end?
Well, actually, I started the show very sick. I just could not stop coughing. So I literally, even through rehearsals, I was coughing the whole way through. I stuck it out for about 9 months, to be honest, and did about 9 months of the show just fighting this cough. And then I just walked into the office one day and said, I can't do this anymore. And they said, you know what? We've been listening to you and we're glad that you're saying this because we're worried about you.
Wow.
I just was coughing and coughing. I just couldn't stop it. I'd been to their specialist, but the NDIS or whatever it is, no, it's not NDIS, NIS or whatever it is over there, and it's just, I don't know, it's not very good. And I just couldn't get anyone who could offer me anything that would help. When I came back to Australia, and also my mother had breast cancer, so those two things I went, okay, now it's time to draw the line and just, let's go back. I did 9 months on the West End. That's good. My contract was only 11 months anyway, so I said, I think it's better if I just leave now. You've got these people who can just step in and do it. Let's just do it. So I came back. And it took me 6 weeks in Australia. they said, oh, you need this and this. This is this long cough, long flu or whatever it is that you've got. You know, like gave me these like much better antibiotics. Within 6 weeks, I was 100% again.
Wow.
But I just could not get that help over there. It was bizarre that it was so easy once I got back here and it was so hard over there. And I went to a number of doctors and it was very strange. But it worked out for the best in the long run. I was here and, you know, well, Mum battled that out and came out the other side and, you know, beat it. And
So once you get back to Australia, and so you take 6 weeks, so obviously you're not singing during that time frame.
No, absolutely not, no.
I sometimes wonder, because I know what it's like for musos. They just
Luckily, I'd saved some money. Luckily, I had saved some money over the time, so.
What happens for you then? What do you make the decision to do musical theatre? You get back into playing? Because I know that...
I basically quit musical theatre.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, absolutely. I hadn't done another musical theatre show until the show that I'm in now, since then. Wow.
I know that you've done other things musically. There was a show that you did... was the four male singers. Didn't you do that? Were you part of that?
We do corporate shows and that sort of stuff. Yeah, I know, it's a weird thing, and I think I've offended a lot of people over the years by saying that I'm not a performer anymore, and they're like, but you're doing what I do, and I'm a performer. I'm like, oh, yeah, but it's not real performing, you know. And I think that...
It's not musical theatre.
Because doing corporate events is very different from doing a show where people pay a ticket price to come and watch your show.
Absolutely.
And corporate events, you know, it's 50-50 whether they'll even listen to what you're singing, because...
Well, they're there to have fun. They're not there to see you do a show.
They're there for the event. They're not there for your show.
That's true.
You're not why they came. And sometimes they are the greatest audience ever. They'll give you everything that you could ever want.
Yes.
But that's not the expectation when you walk on the stage. It's certainly not the expectation.
It's almost the case if you walk on a stage at that and it's like you've got to work really hard to get their attention.
But you might also do the best gig you've ever done and they still ignore you.
Yeah, that's true.
Like you don't actually have control entirely. You have some control. Certainly the better you are, the more chance you have. But they can be an audience that is just not interested.
Yep.
And you can't solve that sometimes. And I mean, you know, I work hard on the stage.
Oh, yeah,
I'm always trying to get them. But there's times where you can't get them because they don't want to be got. They aren't there for that. No. And sometimes they're even a little bit annoyed that you're doing a feature show. You know, you do this.
It's like, I want to chat to my mate.
You're talking about the Frankie Valli show that we do at corporate sometimes.
Yes.
But sometimes they're like, I don't want to stop and watch you. I want to eat my dinner. Like they put it on while they're eating dinner, or they're putting it on just after dinner, or after 18 speeches when they all want to go to the toilet. And, you know, it's so, you know, it's a different sort of thing.
If you're doing some sort of a show at a corporate event, circumstances aren't always in your favour, like you say, with meals being put down. Or that's why I know with, like you were talking about doing comedy earlier, I know I've done a lot of stuff with comedians where they will specifically say, you know, there will not be any meals being served while I'm doing my show.
Well, the worst time to do it is when they're clearing the meals. Clearing meals is the worst time to do anything.
Oh, wow.
Like when they're eating the meals, it's bad. But if it's 20 minutes after that, when they're clearing the meals, that's even worse. Because all it is people moving around, clanking things and moving them off the table. And they're all like, oh, yeah, no, thank you. And that's what your whole act is to people thanking. People who are trying to be very nice to the wait staff, thanking them for clearing their plates and stuff and not paying any attention to you at all. That's actually the worst time. The clearing plates is the key terrible time.
You have done quite a bit of corporate entertainment.
Yes, since I stopped doing this.
And there was a period of time where you were, I guess, entertaining the thought of being an agent of sorts.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love being an agent. I like management. You know, I tour managed for some friends of mine for the Veronicas. I did that for a while. Yeah. And tour managed for them. You know, that sort of stuff is fun.
How did that come about? And why would you go, okay, I'll go and do tour management as opposed to performing?
That was kind of the first thing I did after I left musical theatre. But I had dated Lisa from the Veronicas for a few years.
Okay.
And we'd always stayed very close. Like me and the girls had stayed very close. And they're like, we're doing this thing. We've lost our tour manager. Could you come and do this? And I was like, I don't really know how to do that, but sure, you know. And so I kind of stepped in and did it. Didn't do a particularly good job because I didn't really know, you know, what was involved at the time. Did an all right job, filled the gap as they needed.
Would have been a big learning curve.
Yeah,
so you would
absolutely.
have learnt a lot of stuff.
Absolutely. And that's the key is if you can learn as you go, then it's all right and you don't piss people off. I didn't upset them with it. I just didn't set the place alight with it, with my performance. But, you know, but we got through a couple of years of like getting them to all the stuff that they needed to do. We didn't, you know, and that sort of stuff, filling that gap until they found.
While you were doing that, what did your role entail?
Well, essentially, you know, you book all flights and accommodation, you try and help with the gigs. You don't book the gigs because the agents do that, but you then organise everything as far as, you know, who's available for those things, put the band together, that sort of thing. You make sure that the riders are all in place. You make sure that the right tracks are to the right people and that sort of thing. If we need to organise rehearsals, you do the rehearsals and rehearsal
to
studios.
some degree, a facilitator.
Yeah, it's essentially what I do now here on the Gold Coast most of the time when I'm not doing a show, which is most of the time. And yeah, it's essentially production, but on a frontline sort of version of it.
There was a period of time when you were working with Michelle Barnes doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Still do now.
Still do now?
Yep.
Because you
We
did
even managed somehow to eke out 3 great Christmas events.
I was just
last
going to say,
year.
you did the last big thing.
Thank God for Michelle Barnes.
Because you were doing the Christmas carol. Because I remember...
I talked her into it this year as well, and can I just say, and because she was so busy, and I went, no, it's fine, I can do it all. And then about a month and a half later, I took this contract.
Oh, no.
The poor thing. And we were like, I said, it's all right. I've got 4 weeks before I start. Like, I'll get as much done this 4 weeks. And I did. I got as much done as I could.
Because we did a gig together just before that whole thing went down, and I remember you were...
I was very stressed, and
Yes.
the poor thing, she was very stressed too because she's such a busy person. And I talked her into it, and then I took another contract, and I was like, we'll make it happen. And we did. We made it happen. They were great events. We're very, very lucky here in that we have such professional people that we can rely on, and we can go, okay, I have no time for this. This is what I want it to be. Here's the script. Here's the music. I've edited all of that. You need to find some people
and
teach them this, rehearse it, and get it all up and running. And then that will be a whole 30-minute section that will go in the carols. And those people just do that for us. So we're really lucky is that we have those people.
So you've got a good team of people you can rely on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I've got 2 people in particular. I've got Dave John O'Neill, who's in Brisbane. I've got Louise Vines down here on the Gold Coast. And the 2 of them pretty much can put anything together in a week that I need. That people would go, no, that'll take 6 weeks. I go, we'll get it done.
You were talking about the show you just did recently, which was Jesus Christ Superstar.
I'm on Jesus Christ Superstar at the moment.
At the moment.
I'm having a 2-week break.
Okay.
We're in between the Sydney and the Perth seasons.
Oh, that's right, because you've just finished Sydney.
Just finished Sydney. Yep. We're on a 2-week break. I go to Perth at the end of next week, and then we're off to Melbourne, and then we finish in Brisbane, which is great.
You're not doing the Brisbane show?
I am doing the Brisbane show.
Oh, you are?
I wasn't originally, but I am now.
You are now, so I can come and see it.
Yes.
Awesome.
I wasn't doing Melbourne or Brisbane, but they managed to make a different deal with the person who was doing them, and so now they've engaged me for all of it. So I came on very late into Jesus Christ Superstar.
I do, because I remember we had this discussion and you were doing Sydney and Perth, but you weren't doing Melbourne and Brisbane. Because
they already had somebody for those, yeah. But
Yeah.
they've managed to renegotiate and given that person something else to do. So now they said, we'd love you to stay on.
So I'll put the links down below in the description so people can actually go and buy tickets.
Come watch the show.
In Perth, if you're watching in Perth, or Melbourne, or Brisbane, which is where I'll be going to see it.
And I think that we're getting very close to sold out in what they've already released in Brisbane. So I think we might extend a couple of weeks in Brisbane. I think.
Geez, I better get onto it then.
Yeah, I think there's some room to extend in at QPAC. So hopefully, fingers crossed, because we're looking really good.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It is good. It's good. It's a great show too. It's a really fantastic show. I've been very lucky. I did a couple of, I should say, in the meantime, even though this is the first official musical theatre show I've done, I did do a brief stint filling in for them on Thriller Live when it came to Australia. Mm-hmm. They had someone who had to go back to Britain. And they said, can you come and do this? I went, no worries. I turned up and they went, here you go. And I went, I didn't do any of those songs in the last time I did Thriller Live. So I had to learn another show in a day. But I did that for 3 weeks in Brisbane and then 6 weeks in Melbourne. But that was just a fill-in for them. And then I was very lucky 2 years ago to do a show called Airborne, which is an Irish dance show.
Okay.
But to all modern Irish pop songs, which was actually a fantastic show. Like it's a bit edgy when you're trying to describe it to people that don't really get it, but like it's fantastic. So it's U2 and it's Hosier and all that sort of stuff. You know, take me to church, and they're doing all sorts of dance to it. But it's a fantastic show. So I've done those in the meantime. But as far as a real musical theatre show, this is definitely the first one I've done since I stopped in Britain doing We Will Rock You.
Who else is involved in the show?
There is a guy, I don't know if you've worked with him, but Michael Painter.
No, I haven't. I know the name.
He is possible. In fact, he's at this point in time, he is, in my opinion, the best vocalist in Australia, who is our Jesus.
Yep.
Javon King, who came over, he's an American who came over for Hairspray a couple of years ago and played Seaweed in Hairspray and just decided he didn't want to leave. So he's done all of his visas and he's here permanently. And so he's our Judas. Mahalia Barnes, who is the most wonderful human, is our Mary. And Reuben, I almost said Reuben King. Reuben Kay is is Herod, who's a fantastic performer and also just a wonderful advocate for, the queer community in general. Like he will not be silenced on anything that he thinks needs to be spoken up about. And I really admire those sorts of people. So
he's very passionate.
And also, it's just a wonderful cast.
Yeah.
Our ensemble work much harder than any of our leads, even though Jesus and Judas sing their asses off every night. Like the choreography plus singing plus acting that our ensemble do is just like no show I've ever seen before. And I don't know how they're not broken every day. They are just exceptional and I admire them every day. So,
speaking of choreography, do you have to do any choreography?
I do no choreography in this show. I've done choreography in other shows, to be fair. And I certainly grew up like...
Well, obviously you've had the ballet training.
Moving, and I certainly wouldn't consider myself a dancer nowadays. But in other shows I've had to do a lot of movement and stuff.
Did the ballet training pay off when you had to do the choreography?
Absolutely. And certainly as far as being able to move freely, when I do have to do those sorts of things, it makes a big difference.
And how...
I don't dance like a footballer.
Well, I was just going to say these days, because you've had the knee reconstruction.
The knee's good.
The knee's good?
Yeah.
So, and it doesn't affect movement in any way
Well, no,
anymore?
if you listen to the specialist, he goes, well, I'm going to give you a knee that's probably 110% of what you had before.
Oh, wow.
Because what I do eliminates any of the issues you would have had with the other one because I'm giving you a good knee, I'm just like, okay, that's how he approaches it.
Oh, okay, cool.
But there's all sorts of things. You've got scar tissue and that sort of thing. So every now and again I'll do something that makes it swell up, but that doesn't really affect anything that I have to do. In this show, I sing 3 songs. I have I have another scene that I like to call my walk and glare.
Walk and glare.
Where I walk on stage and I look around and then I start to walk off and someone comes up behind me and I go, and then I leave.
Blue
and
Steel?
That's my entire... Oh, I've thought about doing Blue Steel. Don't get me wrong, I've thought about it, but I'm facing the audience, so I can't. And I look at them and then I just walk off stage. And that's the whole scene.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
What would you say would be the absolute highlight of the things that you've done so far?
The thing I've probably enjoyed the most is when I did Jesus in the tour of Jesus Christ Superstar.
Okay.
Just because I was because of the way it all happened. I was working with the musical director who really admired my singing, which is John Marr, who'd done Rent in Australia. Again, it was one of those things where a week before the show started, so I had a week of rehearsals.
Yep.
And he said, look, I like how you sing and you make good choices in singing. You're not silly about what you choose to do. So here's like some recordings of my five favorite versions of this. Plus you've got the score. You figure out what you want to sing and I'll just tell you if I want you to change it. So I basically, and apart from that...
So to some degree you got carte blanche.
And apart from that, I had to really just learn the blocking and that sort of stuff. We only had a week to learn the whole show. So we'd have a couple of vocal
calls. So when you say
calls,
blocking, you're talking about where you need to be on stage.
moving around the stage, all that sort of stuff, yeah.
Yeah, because there's lighting cues and you have to be at certain points at certain times.
And everywhere you are affects everybody else on stage.
Yeah.
So, so we'd have a couple of vocal calls, but mainly it's about, we need to put you in the show, That's what's hard when a cover goes on is hitting your marks. If you don't hit your marks, everyone else is stuffed up. So yeah, I had a week to learn the whole show. And so I went on tour and started singing. And then the next night I go, I'd like to try this with this. And I'd do it, and occasionally he'd say, oh, I didn't really like that as much as the other one. And usually I go, no, I didn't either. I think you're right. We should go back to the other thing that I was doing. But it was just such a free, really enjoyable situation, and very rare. Like, you very rarely, especially with an Andrew Lloyd Webber show, have that much freedom.
Yeah.
But because there wasn't time to clear everything, it just became this
Let's make it work
free
as best as we
flowing,
can.
you know. And like I said, I don't make stupid, like, I want to sound amazing singing this note. I might want to sound amazing singing that, but unless I can figure out a way that it makes sense in what I'm singing, and the message that I'm trying to get to the audience in the story of the show, I won't do it. If I go, I'm not going to go, why is this so amazing? You know, that makes no sense, you know.
Yeah.
But why is this so amazing? I might do that, you know, because then that makes...
emphasizing the right word.
Well, it's just one example of it. But I won't just take a note up the octave because I decide to do it.
Okay, so John Farnham at one point played Jesus, doing Jesus Christ. Is there, and I know that you're a John Farnham fan.
Yes, but not like you would expect. I've only ever bought one John Farnham album in my entire life.
Really?
And that was Full House, which was the live album.
Wow.
Whereas if you listen to Michael Painter, who's our Jesus right now, he literally in the breaks either listens to scripture or listens to John Farnham albums.
Wow.
That's all he listens to. He's a fan of John Farnham.
Oh, okay.
And
I was going to ask, did you
and
listen
it's worked for him because he is
Did you listen to John Farnham doing Jesus Christ when you did the role?
Yes, he's one of, I mean, he's the only person I had really heard do it apart from watching the movie a few times.
Okay.
But he's the only person I had ever heard do it. It's the only time I'd ever seen John Farnham live actually was in Jesus Christ Superstar. First time I ever heard him sing live in concert was when he was 69, which luckily I went because, you know, obviously just after that it became not an option. But and I saw him at Cirame. And as a 69-year-old, I was listening, literally in the audience going, I can never sing as well as this man. Like, it was just remarkable at that age.
Phenomenal singer.
Phenomenal singer. And but yeah, like I said, Michael Painter he actually sounds almost identical to Jack Jones.
Oh, wow.
Or Norval, whatever Jack Jones' real name is, I can't remember. But almost identical, like, and finds all of those notes so easy, like he just floats those beautiful notes.
Yeah.
There's this, you know, the Jesus B that everyone talks about, though, you know, when I'm gone, and everyone goes, oh, I've got to try and get the Jesus B. He goes, when I'm gone, every night, like in full voice out there. It's like, you bastard. Like, it's just a terrible human to have to work with because you'd never feel like you're the best singer in the room.
And this is such an interesting thing too, because singing is such a physical thing to do.
Yeah.
I wonder, I guess it's like being an athlete. Is it something that you find that you have to train your voice, or do you do exercises when you're not singing, or is it a case of because your voice needs rest when you're not doing the show? Like, you've got 2 weeks off now. Are you just giving yourself vocal rest to that whole time?
It's both. It's absolutely both. I think rest is very important, but also fitness is very important. I mean, I'm not singing. I don't do half of what I would do if I were doing Jesus in this show. Like, I try not to warm up too much because my first song is quite low.
Okay.
I mean, I'd like to sing up the octave, but they won't let me. So, but yeah, so, you know, what is it? And leaving me the blame. You know, it's a baritone song. So I try not to warm up as much as I would usually. Like, if I were doing a Jesus, I'd be doing all of the warm-ups up the octave and that sort of stuff. And I'd be screaming my head off in my dressing room before I go up on stage. Because you really do need to find that place. You also need to figure out how you're doing it. And you need to do that regularly, weirdly. Our brains won't just remember to do it right every time. So you should talk to Mahalia because Michael's a very quiet singer. Michael Painter's a very quiet singer. Sings his amazing notes, but there's, you know, it's so quiet and so easy. Like, he just does it so easily. We all hate him for it. It's so beautiful and so easy for him. But I'm probably, you know, 2 to 3 times as loud as him when I do the same notes. So if I'm doing those big high notes, and if I do it, I'm like, and Mahalia's like, it's like dad warming up because, you know, Jimmy. It's exactly what Jimmy does. He goes, but it's about, that is not about just trying to go, I can sing this note. It's about going, where's that placement If I put it in the right place, I can sing that all night. If I put it in the wrong place,
It hurts your voice.
halfway through the first song, I'm burned.
Yeah.
You know, so
It's an easy thing to blow your voice out.
yeah, but and in exactly the same voice, you know, like you can go, great, I walk on with my amazing voice and I do this and I do it wrong and I'm halfway through the first song and I'm screwed.
Yeah.
Or I do it right and then I've done 40 songs and I'm good to go. You know,
Yeah.
it's like that. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of technique. And so obviously, if you're in downtime, I would never encourage anyone to not sing at all, unless you're injured and need to let it heal. Then you know you should sing every day.
Because it's a muscle that needs to be
absolutely,
worked.
and figure things out. Like it's about reminding your brain how to do things too.
Yeah. I guess it's that thing too. I know from having to learn particular songs and going to rehearsals, there is a certain amount of, I don't know what the word is for it. I guess when you're on stage, there's a certain amount of energy that you have or something that happens that gives you an ability to sing beyond what you think you can.
Yeah, I mean,
I just
or
know-
vice versa. Or vice versa.
okay.
Sometimes I'll overload on something on the stage because I'm trying to give it so much energy,
Okay.
and I'll just do it wrong. And you put it in. You put so much weight on this thing, and you're dragging this sound, which is like this where I'm talking now. But you're trying to sing that up there.
Yeah.
You go ah, and that's what you end up
And
with.
you do
Whereas
damage.
Other times you go ah, and you're like, oh, that's the easiest thing in the world, you know.
Yeah.
So
No, I was just thinking about the because I know that you've got such an amazing range, and obviously you know where that range is. I guess from my point of view, being a non-trained singer, you're sitting down going, okay, what key can I do this particular song in? And it's like, no, I'll never be able to hit that note. I'll put the song down a semitone or maybe more. And then you get to the gig and you go, oh, that wasn't so hard after all. Maybe I should do it.
I also find sometimes I overthink things, and that's what makes me sing them sing them poorly. Like for a while there, I couldn't sing "You're the Voice" at all at a gig, at a band gig, because I was just like, I don't have the ability to do this. And then someone accidentally played it a tone and a half too high, and I sang the ass off it, and I went, because when it gets to that point, you can't load up, like you can't put the weight on it that I was trying to sing the C's on. They were E's. So I'm going, whoa, and you can't put weight on it. It's an E.
Yeah.
You can't go, whoa. You're never going to hit it with a full voice sound. You have to go into that rock blend, you know. And I went, so I'm just singing this badly is what I'm doing. Like I have the ability to sing these C's fine. I'm just trying to sing them like a different sort of note. It's weird. Voices are very weird.
Yeah, they are. And it's amazing how the knowing where those crossover points are. Do you find that it's a very narrow band where your crossover point is, or is it something you can work on to make it more flexible? Like I know from my point of view, the crossover point and going into a falsetto. Now my falsetto can be quite strong.
Well, then it's actually a head voice, not a falsetto. Falsetto is an airy sound. So, that's a falsetto. Is a head voice.
So okay.
So falsetto is actually something that's a little bit different from a head voice.
Oh, okay. So is it something that you find that you can actually increase the range of your normal voice so the crossover can be quite wide, or is it a very narrow? For me, it's a very hard thing. I get to a certain point and it's like, that's it. And then the head voice sort of...
Again, it depends.
And around that range where it crosses over, it's very dodgy.
The thing is, it depends. It depends if you do it right or not. Like if you give me a G or a G sharp, I will hate you forever. Like the first song that Judas sings in the show, Heaven on Their Minds, it's all G's and G sharps, and I hate it. Like I've had to sing it in gigs. And it's like, as soon as you get to an A,
It's
I'm
easy.
like, great, it's the next gear.
Yeah.
It's second gear. It's not.
So it's in that between range for you.
But if you listen to like people talk about things like the perfect vocal technique, then officially every note is equally difficult and equally easy. And the only thing you can do is make it hard. So like if theoretically you can go from your bottom note to the top note with nothing different. I can't do it because I have to pressurize because I'm not a tenor. So when I sing high, I do a pressurized technique, which is just not purposely, that's just what always happened. But if you go from it should be no more difficult to sing that top note than it is to sing the bottom note. And the only thing we do is make it more difficult for ourselves. So there's a technique called speech level singing.
Yes.
Which Michael Jackson was famous for promoting. And the whole purpose of that, the thing that he says is it's something like the perfect way of singing is when the singer refuses to help the note.
Interesting.
So if you don't
psychological
help
way
the
of
note and
thinking
just let the note come out, then that's what actually works. But as soon as we go, that's when we're trying to push it up with our muscles and
the pressure.
Whereas all that should happen is we're woodwind instruments, so you know it's just air, and all that happens is the difference in pitch is just how fast your folds are moving.
Oh, okay.
So your folds are doing a different wave at a different speed, the wave at a different speed. So the faster they go, the higher the note.
Okay.
So theoretically, the only difference is the speed of the folds. Everything else, the air and everything, is exactly the same.
Okay,
so this is the accelerator.
When your voice is really tired and you're struggling to hit the high notes, it's because the folds are...
Swollen probably.
Yeah,
we swell pretty regularly. If you ever look at anybody who sings loudly after a gig, they'll have some swelling. Like, you know, we're using very small muscles all the time. We're not using quads, which are these giant things. We're using these really tiny muscles. So there'll be some swelling.
Yeah.
But that's not a bad thing. That's just use, you know.
Yeah.
It's just a general use. You go to the gym and you work out, your muscles swell. They tear, they swell, you know, that sort of stuff. So
when I'm gigging 5 nights a week, your voice gets to a point where it's like it's very consistent.
You hit autopilot. Yep.
Yeah. You hit
cruise
autopilot.
control. Yep.
But if you take a couple of weeks off and then go out and sing a gig, and that first gig, your voice can feel amazing.
I used to sing sharp in that first gig, yeah.
But it's very easy to blow your voice out as well because you're going, oh man, it's so good. I feel so great. I'm going to do, and you basically blow your voice out. I guess that's one of the reasons why it's great, like you were saying, that you should always be practicing your singing.
You should never take 2 weeks of not, unless you're injured. If you're injured and they go, total rest, then total rest. Do what the professionals say. But apart from that, absolutely you should warm up every day. Just do a 15-minute warm-up.
Is there a big difference?
I don't, but we should.
No. I was going to say, is there a big difference between talking and singing as far as vocal use?
It depends how you do it. There doesn't have to be, but there generally is. Like, I mean, you listen to me talk now. This is. I sing most of the show where I'm talking now, but most shows that I do, I don't sing anywhere near this register. I'm usually singing at least an octave above this.
Yeah.
You know, so if you listen to true tenors, they have no low range. True tenors talk like this.
Oh, okay.
And they talk the whole time like this because they don't actually have a low range. Because, you know, most men are high baritones, but then every now and again you hear a tenor and they talk like this because there's.
So are you a tenor?
No, I'm a high baritone like most men.
A high baritone. Okay. So what range? Well, you know, after listening to my voice, would I be a high baritone?
Yeah, you'd be the same as me, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, most men are high baritones.
Okay.
There are very few bass singers, and I can almost sing as low as a bass singer, but a bass singer will actually, they can't speak above a certain level. Like there's very few real bass singers, and they'll talk like this, and they can't sing above a certain level.
Perfect radio voice?
Oh, you know, they're all this sort of thing. And that's where they live. you
Yeah.
know. So, but generally, most women are mezzo-sopranos, most men are high baritones.
Okay. How very interesting.
If you hear an alto, a true alto, which, you know, girls sing, I'm sing alto. I go, yes, but you're not an alto, you're a mezzo-soprano. They're like, no, I'm an alto. I go, an alto speaks like this. Like altos sing lower than tenor men do.
Wow.
Like true altos can sing lower than a true tenor can sing.
Interesting. Okay.
Is it interesting?
Yes, it is. On a different tack, we spoke about a highlight. Is there anything that you've done that you would say was a decision that you regret making? Or something that happened along the way that you would do differently if you had your chance over again?
That's a hard one. Give me a minute to think, because I might be able to come up with something.
Well, obviously, one of the things of doing your knee in, that would have been a bit of a low point. But I mean, I guess it's that, like you look back, those sliding door moments when you go, I had the opportunity to do that, but I said no.
No, I think I've been really lucky in that most of the opportunities that have come up, I've been able to take advantage of. I think I could have done a lot of things differently in my life that would have made me much more successful. Mm-hmm. I could have been much more a self-promoter. I could have been much more proactive about things, but I'm not that personality type. I'm very reserved as a person, which would surprise people because in a public situation, a social situation, I did a takeover, but that's more that kind of panic. so I sort of fill all the gaps,
Would you say then, bearing that in mind, would you say that you're introverted or extroverted?
I'm very introverted naturally, but if you saw me in a social situation, you'd probably think I was extroverted. But it's more kind of it's that trying to fill the gaps thing. But I just avoid those situations most of the time. I very rarely would go into a social situation.
Yeah.
I'm a hermit. I could live in a cabin in the woods by myself. Get attacked by a bear.
Lovely. And you were saying like the personality for being a self-promoter. Do you really? I know it's one of those things from my point of view. It's not a natural state to be in. I find it very difficult to do. I'm just wondering, I'd be curious to have a chat with somebody who actually is very good at doing that, and whether it's something that they've actually really had to knuckle down and work at, or whether it was just a decision they made and it was easy for them to do it. It's an interesting point of view. Do you have an opinion about that in any way?
I mean, I don't, but I would go back to Casey Barnes. Casey Barnes is a fantastic self-promoter. And he will just keep going until someone gives him a yes. And I think it's very...
Do you think that's a learned thing, or do you think it's something...
I think it's partly learned. I think it's like most things. It's like singing, it's partly learned and it's partly work. It's partly natural ability and it's partly work.
Yeah.
Is what I think those things are. And I think, but yeah, you have to make that choice. I think most of us, particularly creative people, will let ourselves off too early.
Yeah.
We go, oh, that was really hard.
It's where management...
I feel really uncomfortable and, that's not me.
It's where management might come in and be really quite helpful.
Absolutely. Whereas those people who do continue at it, you watch them become successful though. The Veronica's parents probably took them into 10 recording sessions with different producers. I took them to every record company and shopped them around to everybody before they got sold. And they did not take a no.
Yeah.
They spent probably $100,000 on demos and stuff before they actually got signed by Engine Room and then on-sold to, all the publishing company and then to Sony in the US. They just did not stop.
Yeah.
And that's what it works. It works eventually.
Dogged
if
determination.
You've got talent, plus some good music, plus dogged determination. But very few people have those three things all at once.
Yeah.
It's very hard, because most people who are really creative and really brilliant, luckily we've got the internet now, so sometimes they get found anyway.
Yeah. Have you had management of your career? Have you had a manager per se?
I had an agent for about 1.5 years. Apart from that, I've actually never had an agent. I've just been very lucky, and the people that I've worked with have suggested me for other work.
Okay. Do many people who do the theatre type roles, do they generally have managers or?
They all have agents. I don't know anyone else that doesn't have an agent, to be honest.
Okay.
I don't know how I've survived. I know part of it's because I'm a white boy, and I've grown up in a time when if you're a white boy in musical theatre, you're the most sought after person in musical theatre.
Oh, really? So there's a bit of a rarity.
Not that many leading men out there, and at that point, certainly when I was coming up, the producers couldn't see anybody who wasn't a white man being the leading man.
Oh, wow.
So they were like, wow, we need another white guy who can be the leading man. Nowadays the diversity is great, and I think it's a fantastic thing. And I don't think you could be as lazy as I was and get cast so much.
Yeah.
You know, so as lucky as I was, and, you know, have people just go, this guy's the guy. And then turn up and do one audition and they call you the next day and offer you the role, you know?
Yeah.
Because they go, oh, anyone could do this. Like, who's got the best talent, you know, now? It's not like we have to make this person fit this box. It's very much not that sort of an industry anymore, which I think is very positive.
Okay, so you're at the moment doing the Jesus Christ Superstar. Yes. That finishes sometime later this year. What's in the future for Peter Murphy?
I will go back to writing, producing, and directing, I imagine.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no desire to continue this performance thing. I think it's a young person's game.
Yeah.
The only role I've ever not done that I would really love to do is Valjean in Les Miserables.
Oh, wow.
I think that's a role that would be amazing to sing. You know, would suit my range particularly. You know, the low stuff and then the high stuff's only like to C or something. So it wouldn't even be like a big sing in a night. It'd be just
So just put that out to the universe
something
now.
you do for 8 shows a week. And
If anybody out there is watching and they need...
Well, I always thought I was too small to do Valjean, but then they cast Simon Gleeson, who's about my height and much smaller, like frame, and I went, I would never even audition for it because I always think, you know, Valjean's this guy who lifts the cart off of a man, but yeah, after that I went, okay, well maybe there's some potential, you know.
There you go. The one big role that you wanted to do.
Take an eye for an eye, you know, it'd be fun. It's so much fun.
Cool. All right. Well, at that point, I would like to say thank you very much, Pete.
Thank you.
Man.
Thank you, Scotty.
I'll put all links to stuff that Pete has done or is doing, so anybody who wants to go and check it out can go along and buy tickets to go and see Jesus Christ Superstar if you're in Perth, Melbourne or Brisbane.
It's at Crown at Perth. It's at the Princess Theatre in Melbourne, and it's at QPAC in Brisbane.
I'll be going along to Brisbane. I'm looking forward to it now. Anyway, thank you for watching the podcast, and hopefully I'll see you on the next one.
Bye.
Cheers.